widow helps struggling boy with his school fees. 5 years later, he comes back to save her. In the heart of a bustling Nigerian city, there lived a poor widow named Ngozi Okafor. She was known for her kind heart, despite the little she had. Every day, she set up a small stall by the roadside, selling tomatoes and peppers. Her life wasn't easy, but she always found a way to make ends meet. Her daughter, Amara, was her greatest source of joy, and every penny Ngozi earned went into providing for her. One afternoon, as the sun blazed overhead, Matthew, a young boy of about 12, walked past Ngozi's stall, his face streaked with tears. He looked around anxiously, his eyes puffy from crying. People rushed past him, too busy to notice, but Ngozi, with her sharp eyes, saw the sadness in his face. She stood up from her stall and called out to him. "My son, why are you crying?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Matthew sniffled and wiped his eyes. "I lost my school fees. Mama, I don't know what to do. My father and stepmother will be angry. I was supposed to pay for my exams today, and now I have nothing." Ngozi's heart ached. She was a widow, struggling to feed her family, but the pain of this young boy's sorrow hit her deeply. Without thinking, she knelt beside him and placed her hand on his shoulder. "My son, don't cry," she said softly. "Tell me what happened." Matthew explained how his father had lost his job months ago, leaving his stepmother to provide for them. She had given him money for his school fees, but warned him not to return home without the receipt. He had placed the money carefully in his pocket, but somewhere on his journey, it had fallen, and he hadn't noticed. Ngozi listened carefully, her heart sinking with each word. She didn't have much, but she could see the fear and desperation in his eyes. She knew what she had to do. "How much do you need?" Ngozi asked, her voice gentle but firm. 5,000 naira, Matthew replied shakily. Ngozi stood up and walked to a small tin box under her stall. It contained the last of the money she had earned that day, the little she had saved for herself and Amara. She took the money and placed it gently in Matthew's hands. "Take this, my son," she said, her voice steady but filled with warmth. "Go and pay your school fees. It's my last, but it will be enough. Promise me you will focus on your studies. Don't let this setback stop you." Matthew's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you sure, Mama?" he asked, tears threatening to spill again. Ngozi smiled softly. "Yes, my child, you must succeed. One day, you will do great things, and I know you won't forget this moment. I promise, Mama. I will make you proud," Matthew said, clenching the money tightly in his hand. Ngozi placed a gentle hand on his head and whispered a prayer for him. "God bless you, my child." With a grateful smile, Matthew ran off to school, clutching the money as if it were his most prized possession. Later that evening, after Matthew had returned home with the receipt, he sat down with his father, Chijioke Okafor, a man who had fallen into despair after losing his job. The tension in the air was thick, but Matthew's father felt a glimmer of relief when he saw the receipt in his son's hands. "Did you pay the school fees?" Chijioke asked, his voice tired but hopeful. Double quotes, "Yes, Daddy," Matthew replied, holding up the receipt. Chijioke's face softened, but then Matthew's voice dropped. "But, Daddy, I need to tell you something." Chijioke frowned. "What is it, son?" Matthew's voice shook as he spoke. I lost the money on my way to school today. I searched everywhere. I cried, but I couldn't find it. The room went silent. Chijioke's face hardened with anger, and his voice rose. How could you be so careless, Matthew? Do you know what this money means? Your stepmother will punish us again. She will blame me for everything. Matthew's heart sank. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to. I was so scared. But just then, Matthew continued, but someone helped me. Daddy, a woman. By the roadside, she saw me crying, and she gave me the money. She said it was her last, but she didn't mind helping me. Chijioke stared at his son, his anger faltering. A woman helped you? Just like that? Matthew nodded, his eyes full of gratitude. Yes, she told me to never forget her name. She said her name was Ngozi. She told me to be serious in school and to never follow bad friends. For a moment, Chijioke sat in stunned silence. Then, a wave of emotion hit him. He had never imagined that a stranger would show such kindness to his son. God bless that woman, he whispered, almost to himself. We must go and thank her, as Matthew and his father made plans to visit Ngozi. Fate had already dealt another blow to her. The next morning, as she sat at her stall, a loud commotion filled the air. Trucks rumbled down the street, and men in uniforms were shouting. One of them held a megaphone and announced that all roadside stalls had to be removed. The government had decided that the land was no longer available for vendors. Before she could gather her things, the men started tearing down her stall. They smashed her baskets and tossed her goods aside. She tried to plead with them, but it was no use. Her tomatoes were scattered on the ground, and her stall was completely destroyed. Tears filled her eyes as she stood there, helpless. Where will I go now? She cried. She gathered the few remaining tomatoes into a small basket and walked home, her heart heavy with worry. When she arrived, she found that the landlord had thrown her and Amara's belongings out on the street. He had refused to listen to her pleas for more time. Madam, I warned you, he said, his voice cold. You haven't paid your rent for a year. You and your daughter must leave. Ngozi dropped her basket, running to Amara. Are you okay, my child? Amara nodded, her face red from crying. Mama, they threw everything out. I begged them to wait, but they wouldn't listen. Ngozi's heart broke as she embraced her daughter. I'm sorry, my child. I tried. That night, as they sat outside, cold and hungry, Ngozi prayed silently. She asked for a miracle, unsure of how to move forward. Then, a few days later, a miracle arrived in the form of a phone call. Matthew's father, Chijioke, had managed to win a significant sum in a lottery, a life-changing amount. He immediately used the money to repay all their debts and to find a new house for his family. Years passed, and life changed dramatically for Matthew and his family. After his father's sudden luck, Matthew went on to complete his education, eventually becoming a successful businessman. He never forgot the woman who had given him everything that day. Every year, he searched for Ngozi Okafor, but she was nowhere to be found. One day, as fate would have it, he crossed paths with her again. In a twist of destiny, the very woman who had once helped him and the daughter he had fallen in love with turned out to be the same. Agatha, Ngozi's daughter, had become Matthew's heart's desire. The boy who had once cried for his school fees now stood before the woman who had changed his life forever. Matthew's gratitude knew no bounds. Not only had he found love in Agatha, but he had found the woman who had once saved him, Ngozi, the kind-hearted widow who had given him her last money. Matthew, now a successful businessman, honored the kindness of Ngozi. He bought her a beautiful house, repaid her for all her sacrifices, and vowed to take care of her and Agatha for the rest of his life. He married Agatha in a grand ceremony, and Ngozi, with tears of joy in her eyes, watched as her daughter and Matthew began their new life together. God truly works in mysterious ways, Ngozi whispered, looking up at the sky.